Okay, I'm going to start. You all know me. And this is my father, Neil Di Lorenzo. His parents each immigrated here from Italy at different times when they were children. His mother from Torino and his father from Avellino. In fact, I was telling a story when I lived with his mother after college. I thought I was going to impress him speaking Italian, but I get on the phone and he said, she's teaching you Piemontese. And anyway, he graduated from Georgetown University with in the School of Foreign Service and Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania. He speaks 6 languages, spent 37 years in international automotive and heavy-duty industry. After retirement, though, he couldn't really retire like many of you. He taught international management and marketing at several graduate schools of business. Besides his travels to Italy for business, though, he orchestrated many trips throughout for pleasure for he and my mother, other family, and many other people taking their first or maybe their 20th trip wanting a different perspective. So he hopes to bring you a little insight on just some of the history of Italy and some other off-the-beat destinations and wonderful favorite places of his.
Oh, that phone doesn't go down there. Buonasera. Yeah, signori. I know from talking to a few of you, I was going to ask the question, how many have Italian heritage? I know this couple does, a few others, no? How many have visited Italy? How many more than once? Good, so you can correct me as I talk then. Right? All right, what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about Italian history, and then talk about some travel. And if you have a question during the way, or I make a mistake, please correct me. All right. Although we talk about in general, many people have traveled to Italy, and they think they know some Roman history. Most of the people did learn it in school. Maybe you taught Roman history somewhere in your lower school. Usually they taught something about Roman history and civilization. But somewhere along the way in college, I hope if you went there, you learned something about the Renaissance. Now, most people, though, they say, well, I know that. So they have a perspective of Italy as having always existed from the Roman Empire right on up till now, which is not true, as we all know. Italy as a nation has only existed since 1870, 100 years less than this country. Italy, as you know, is a young nation. Was a young nation in an old land. We talk about 1870. It was known to the ancients as Italia, centuries before a country bearing its name came about. And we'll talk about how that name came about too, the first time. It's a cornerstone of Western history, and Western history. Julius Caesar, Charlemagne, and Napoleon all ruled in Italy. Constantine the Great had a divine inspiration in Rome and spread Christianity throughout the kingdom. Michelangelo and Leonardo created, Verdi composed, and St. Francis prayed. Now let's go to the card. This we're going to talk about. These are the areas we're going to talk about today at times. We're going to talk about the Etruscan civilization, Rome and the Empire, barbarian invasion, the Byzantine Empire, Papal States, the Plague, the Renaissance, Counter-Reformation, Enlightenment, Napoleon in Italy, and unification. Another way of looking at it. No, I don't want to go back. No. As you get older, your children sort of manage you very well, don't they? Of course, my father taught me at 70, you work backwards. So I'm now 53. Rich in natural beauty, gilded with sunshine, and the existence of dolce vita, it attracted pillagers and princes from beyond the Alps who broke up the peninsula into various states, etc. As we went on. We'll find this out. Unified since 1870, it's now a very good, prosperous country. It still enjoys the sweet life, and it's sort of to revel into various different parts of as you visit it. There was a British statesman who called it the native land to us all, talking about Italy. Now we'll go on to the Etruscan part. You can look at this map and you won't find too many names up there that you recognize. Before the Romans, central Italy belonged to the Etruscans, a mysterious people who left only fragments of their written language. They were farmers, miners, and engineers. They built sewers, and they drained the swampy valley that became the center of Rome. Wary of the Greeks in the south, here is the Etruscans. You see Naples. You see Naples and Rome here, but you very see another town, Salerno, other towns that you recognize there. Wary of the Greeks in the south, who were their main traders, they didn't pay any attention to what was happening in Rome, and it was too late. And the upstart Romans, who attacked their city-state for 130 years, took over their own area in 265 BC, and it became the Roman state. Any questions on this land? As you can see the difference later on from Italy. So it shows the Tuscans up there, a few others. Look at the names. Not too many that you recognize. And as I said, they still today are finding parts of the Etruscan civilization and things about it. Their history was not left. And they did have a written language. Rome and the Empire. Romans won independence from the Etruscan rule in 509 BC. The government was a republic, administered by 2 consuls, recommended by the Senate, and elected by the male population. 600 years from the time of the establishment of the Roman Republic, the Republic had been replaced by a mighty empire. At least 50 million subjects from Britain to Armenia. Quite an empire in those days. Historians still debate why the empire collapsed. The city of Rome was sacked twice in the 5th century, all before a German general took control in 476. A century later, the Lombards from the north broke up the peninsula into about 3 dozen duchies, which are not shown here. And there is no disputing, though, that Rome's legacy in architecture, politics, urban planning, law, literature, and languages are still spoken around the world. Whereas what we're saying is, yes, they broke it up, got rid of it, but during that time, the history of this is well taken throughout the world. There's 6 Latin languages. Want to name them for me? The 4 you know very well. I still have a Romanian. That's just what people forget about. Got Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Romanian, and one little one from Switzerland, Romanesque. A Romanesque is about 2% of the Swiss speak it. It comes from a little valley, and it's basically speaking Latin. If you're traveling in Switzerland, you'll see these guys with these bottom black pants that sort of blossom out like a sailor, and they're wearing these really big black fedoras, and those are the Romanesque. Now we go on to the barbarian invasions in the Byzantine Empire from 200 AD to 600 AD. Emperor Diocletian split the empire into eastern and western branches in 286 AD. And I think you know those areas pretty well. Lighter tan and darker tan. And headquartered in Constantinople under Emperor Constantine. And it expanded once he took over, but it did very well. Where the invaders came in, you can see very well here. And they came from all over, mostly from the east. The Franks coming out of Germany, but you had the Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, and what's the other Goths? There's three Goths, don't there? The Goths, Visigoths, and Ostrogoths. And the Vandals who came circuitous route through France and Spain and North Africa to Carthage, back into Rome. I miss any? Yes, I missed the Saxons. This went on for quite a few years, as we said, 750, what was the word now? 200 to 600 AD, so it's 400 years of this. In the meantime, though we're not showing it here, you talked about attacking Rome. The rest of the peninsula was breaking up and was broken up into many different duchies and kingdoms, as you'll see as we go further. Next, we talk about the Papal States from 756 to 1870 AD. After Emperor Constantine recognized Christianity in 313 AD, the church land holdings grew quickly through the donations of the faithful. In other words, even though we see here of the Papal States going from Rome up to, now this would be Ravenna on the Adriatic, you see it's sort of smaller. This actually kept growing with donations from here, and I'll tell you how, but also how it became even larger. In the 8th century, Pope Stephen II, with military help from Pepin, the king of the Franks and father of Charlemagne, used false documents to claim a broad swath of land from Rome to Ravenna on the Adriatic. So this actually grew. He took pieces of Tuscany and Spoleto, and it became a much larger piece of land. It was called the Patrimony of St. Peter, and it would be ruled by popes for the next 11 centuries. There we go. I'm sorry, I'm pushing the wrong one. The plague. Now, it looks like a long time there, and it certainly happened during the same period. Sailors from Genoa, Sicily, and the other ports in Italy who were in the east-west trade brought in the plague from Crimea, actually, is where they think it came from. It killed at least a third of Italy's 10 million people between 1347 and 1357. In other words, the first 10 years was really a disaster. After that, it came in different areas, sort of time after time, but not as it was disastrous in the beginning. Now we get to the period you all studied, I think. And you can all think of all the art and things that you saw when you were in Italy, and the churches and that you visited, and the villas, and see the area, how it came about. This is 1400 to 1527 AD. In 1454 was the Treaty of Lodi, not the one in Hackensack, near Hackensack, New Jersey. It's the next town over is Lodi. That's what the treaty brought peace to the sparing city-states and church duchies and kingdoms. And most of them were the part of the Holy Roman Empire, which was in the north. This was the Holy Roman Empire at that time. And the big thing that happened at this time was the merchant class got very strong coming up. There wasn't any before. And the printing press was invented. So what happened? The bishops who controlled the spread of knowledge no longer had the control of the spread of knowledge, which went fast. Something like you had today under the World Wide Web, only probably multiplied 100 times more so. The wealthy commissioned works of art from great artists artists were using new techniques in painting and everything else as you studied in Italy or as you visited all the churches in Italy and the museums. The out row was just flow of artistic masterpieces, which we have all learned to see. Excuse me. One thing else I want to point out here is take another look at the map and see the changes. Always changing. We have in the south, King of Naples, and this area here was all controlled by who? Spain. And here's your papal states changing again here. Here you have some of the duchies and the kingdoms in the north and also here. You can read them. I can. Read them on the side. Here's the Kingdom of Siena, and the Tuscany, and the Kingdom of, these are duchies, and I presume this is Savoy and Lombardy, and this is the Kingdom of Venice, and all down the coast here, the Dalmatian coast. But you see the changes that's happened over the periods in Italy. Next came the Counter-Reformation. Excuse me. Stung by the, I would call them the mutinies of the German Martin Luther and England's Henry VIII, along with the sacks of Rome by the Germans, you ended up with the German Protestants, the Roman Catholic Church retreated to an orthodoxy. It banned books, it burned books, it confined Roman Jews to a ghetto, and it burned heretics at the stake, just like they did in Spain. And Spain, of course, controlled southern Italy, Sicily, and Sardinia. And I think from the colors you're seeing the religion as Roman Catholic, Lutheran in red, the Calvinists, and the Anglicans, as it existed at that time. The Enlightenment Period. 1700 to 1800. The map is 1766, I believe. As the intellectuals in America, France, and Britain sang praises of reason and basic human rights, the the backward and divided Italy, her glories long past, became a playground for tourists, particularly Rome's ruins and the newly discovered excavations of Pompeii and Herculaneum. However, Italy was not asleep during this period. There was many great inventions, great writers, and along came the opera. Now comes Napoleon over the Alps. The French general stated he was only there to transfer equality and liberty and fraternity. He drove the Austrians out of the northeast and the Spanish out of the south, and named his brother Joseph King of Naples, and declared himself King of Italy. And for the first time, a political state had used the name Italy. So there's the first use of the name Italy, and you can see the breakup. Now, the French Empire is there because this is the map, but basically taking the Kingdom of Italy and putting the whole thing together, he was ruling the north and his brother the south. What the heck happened? We get to unification. All right, this map is, I think it's 1858 to 1870, something like that. 1860, it says it right on there. 1858 to 1870. with democratic uprisings across Europe. In 1840, Italian patriots stepped up their own campaign to wrest control from the Austrians and the Bourbons in the south and others. From the Piedmont, diplomat Camillo Cavour and firebrand Giuseppe Mazzini famed the plans of Risorgimento. Giuseppe Garibaldi in central Italy helped the Piedmontese defeat the Lombards, then put together a ragtag army to take the south, while prodding the Piedmontese to push through central Italy. And this is where and this is how they pulled this whole country into one. If you have not read about that era, I have books on it. It's very interesting read of history during this period and the politics within Italy, because even though Garibaldi, I think, well, he was good, the people in the Piedmont didn't really want him to have power because he was one of the commoners. And where these people were the top, and they controlled Sardinia and Sicily too from Turin. And so, and of course, they had the support of the French. So this took a lot of debating on who was going to do what, but they finally pulled the country together, except for who? The Vatican was not too pleased with this and still wanted to hold on to their states. So, so with the final defeat of the Papal States in 1870, modern Italy was in place, although some territory was added and subtracted after World War I and World War II. The Vatican did not recognize secular states until 1929, and that's why we say it was the 1929 here, because there were still some of the Papal States, but it was really the only Papal States left was the Vatican. And I'm sure that you're all familiar talking about what happened to my next? We have it. Italy. I'm sure you're familiar with Italy as an ally in World War I, and Benito Mussolini's joining the Axis in World War II. And I'm sure you're familiar with the number of governments. I think it's over 200 since the Second World War in Italy. The only thing that I would say, that's continuous through this time is Dolce Vita. And it's still there, and it's still enjoyable, and that's why everybody goes there. Any comments or questions on Italy today, or the history, or they all traveled there? Any questions or comments?
Well, just one, because my ancestors are all from the South.
Yep.
And the victory of Italian unification under Cavour and Piedmont really was not national unification. It meant oppression for southern Italy. Before unification, Naples was a very prosperous place. After that, not to be cynical, the Piedmontese under Cavour and his successors made an arrangement with the wealthy landowning classes and the hierarchy of the church at the expense of the peasantry and the common people. That's one reason why there was such a mass emigration from Italy.
Oh, yes.
Not only to the United States, but to Northern Europe and to South America.
And particularly Argentina. I have family there too. Yes, that's quite true. And remember that the southern Italy was ruled by Spain. So you have quite a different relationship. The rest of Italy was not very strong. And what you say is true. And there are books that are very worthwhile reading about all of this political in-play that took to bring this country together. And you're saying it wasn't in a very short period of time. It took quite a while for this all to happen, and for all these people to get together, and they were still fighting after it, as you put, Naples being a particular area controlling the south. Well, now actually some of the other southern towns have become a little stronger, But as you say, most of this, 80% of the Italians that immigrated here probably came from the South. My mother's family being an exception from the North. They were tended to be more educated, or at least they were engineers, or they were something. My grandfather was a chef and a carpenter. My father, they were just workers. But it took them not too long to do very well here in this country. And they learned English quite quickly. The second generation did it, and this is what the problem is here today, when we're not getting the English. They made my father go to kindergarten because he spoke 3 languages, but not English. But he did very well getting through the school system. But nowadays they try to teach him, or they make them teach him in Spanish, learning American history in Spanish in some schools. It doesn't work for the country. That's what's happening. All right, let's go on to talk about travel. I think we all have traveled by plane, and everybody by train and bus and some other way. In Italy, it's easy, of course. You have the people who do by plane. They want to go see Naples, Rome, Genoa, Venice or something, and they can get there by plane, or sometimes they just do it by train. And you don't see much of the country or learn much of the cities or towns or the people. The bus tours are good for people who haven't been there before, but you usually found out that many of these travel to Italy, and their first tour is a 9 or 10 day package deal that leaves maybe from Rome to Siena to Florence to Genoa to Venice, and they've seen Italy. Now, if you really see a country and you want to see the countryside and learn the people and the towns, you really have to see it by area, and that's my thing today, is picking an area and how do you go about it, and which are your favorite areas to see. Now, if you got 3 and 4 weeks, you can see 2 and 3 areas, not just one. But this is what I'm taking on an area today, little by little, and saying, now here's my favorite one, and let's go to this. Let's talk about the Sorrento Peninsula. This is one of my favorite areas. It says, here we're talking about the South. You know where Naples is? Way back in the corner back here. This is the Bay of Naples. And this is Sorrento in the port. From here, you certainly can take your hydrofoil out to Capri and Ischia for a day. Sorrento is a small town or city. Actually, it's a city, but it's small. It's very beautiful as far as the parks and the flowers and the big hotels on the cliffs with their views over the water. And it's enjoyable. One day visit, I think, is about what I would say. And another day to go to Capri and Ischia, if that's your luck. If you want to go once, it's worthwhile. Now we go to my favorite place. What is that? Huh? Positano. Positano, and this is about 17 kilometers south only, across the peninsula to the south. And you're going to hit the Amalfi Drive, and you're going to come down you come down this way, of course, not straight down the hill. And this is 2 areas of it, and the beaches below. The houses and the hotels and everything are just stacked. They're colorful, stacked up and down the mountain. Beautiful day to spend a couple days there. The 2 hotels that are very well known there are the Serenus and the Miramare, and they're stuck in the hillsides here. I think this is one right here in the red, and the other one's on the other side. And I don't know if any of you have been there, been into the San Pietro. San Pietro is, this is the area here coming down. If you come across this beach way over here to hit the next big mountain side, the San Pietro is built into the mountain, into the rocks, and into the cliff. It's incredible. You can enter from the beach into the elevator shaft going up, or from the road from Amalfi Drive, you would pull off, and there's just like a little building there, which is the top end of the elevator shaft. And you go down up to about, I think it's 16 floors. You get down to the 12th floor, there's the desk, and there's the most beautiful dining room in the world, open to the sea and to the village. And it's a very expensive place to stay, of course. It's about $800, $900 for a basic room. It's down to euro. It's very expensive, but it's worth the luncheon. I will tell you that. and it certainly is worth a couple days winding the streets here and buying little things, and the beach. Many years ago, I think 50s, 60s maybe, I remember there was a spit of land out with a beautiful home sitting out for the beach, about where those boats are out going further into the water. There was this beautiful home. I asked, who owns that? It's beautiful. It was Sophia Loren. Now, I don't know if she owns it today. One thing I do know, she's 3 days younger than I am, and she looks a hell of a lot better. Okay, so we're leaving Positano, and we're headed to where? We're going to head to the the city of its name, Amalfi. Amalfi is a great place. It's on the way there, I forgot to mention, there's an emerald grotto that you can go down into the sea on a boat. Like instead of the blue grotto, you go down under, and it's green instead of blue waters, and it's worth a stop. It'd probably take you an hour. The mythology is that this is an ancient city. Actually, it was a seafaring history of Amalfi, which is about halfway between Positano and Salerno. Hercules supposedly built this city on the spot he buried his wife and gave it her name, Amalfi. That's it. It has unequaled scenery and beauty, and you walk through the hills and the mountain side. This is the plaza over here, and it faces right on the water. Amalfi Drive is basically where we're standing, and you're in the water. And the plaza is here, and this is the cathedral right on your right. So it's open to the sea, everything. And then you have, it's a small city, actually, is what it is. And you can't, like all these places, you have to walk. The next stop for us is always Ravello. Ravello is about 1,100 feet. I can show, I can't remember. Well, it's on the, Ravello is, now we don't have the peninsula here, it's not shown very well. Is about here halfway back to Salerno is in here, Amalfi, that's where we are. And you go up 1,100 feet climbing up, and you're on a lovely town, Ravello, overlooking the sea, and a beautiful town of flowers, and very, very lovely spot. Why we like to go there, it's also a place to buy Italian crockery, all the beautiful painted dishes and things that you see and I enjoy having, and my wife enjoyed having. And the other place to buy it is Deruta, which we'll mention later on in central Italy. And from there you head to back into Salerno, and maybe a stop at Trani, which is another town along the way. I'm not going to mention all the villages. Salerno has become very strong city for southern Italy for commerce, has 2 ports. Salerno, you remember the war, was our landing place for the American troops coming in from Sicily. It's quite a city now. It has the old city and the new city. I think we mentioned before, my father comes from Avellino, the province. Actually, he comes from a town nearby called Sorrento, this way. From there, if you're headed north, you get to stop at the base of the peninsula is the Pompeii and Herculaneum. If you haven't been there, it's certainly worth a day's visit. See the ruins. In fact, I saw something in the paper the other day of some new discoveries in Pompeii. Yes. From there, the next trip I like to take is, everybody goes to Florence, is to head west and northwest above La Spezia, through here, about here, which is Cinque Terre. Okay, so on the way from Florence, you might want to stop in. I don't want to stop it. Montecatini. Everybody been to Montecatini and Montecatini Alto? This is a city of spas, and it's very, very good city. And the Germans frequent this city. It has all the big old hotels, very enjoyable city, and it has, you take a funicular up to Montecatini Alto, which is an artist colony. A nice morning spent there, and usually come down with some artwork. And that's Montecatini. A lot of people there like to stop at Lucca on the way further west. It's not my favorite place, but a lot of people like it for the gardens and the ponds. It's a fortress city. It's well liked. It's the birthplace of Puccini, and it has it's all the ramparts and churches and the cathedral there. You can walk the ramparts. You seem to have liked it. You, Signor, can tell us something about Lucca that you liked?
The nice thing about it, I felt, is that the walls were old and they were maintained and not destroyed.
Very right. So you
No automobiles.
you can walk on it. That's correct. And in most of these towns and cities we'll be talking about today, at least, they've kept the automobiles out. You have to walk and park your car. And I'll tell you some stories about doing that. From Lucca, a lot of people like to stop in Carrara, which is both the town and where, the magnificent white marble that was from the quarry of Michelangelo's white marble, also from Donatello and Brunelleschi, very famous for taking their marble from this area. And you can actually go see the foundry, the marble being mined. From there, Sestri Levanti is my place to visit. Cinque Terre. Sestri Levanti is just La Spezia is on the south side of it, and the north side. In fact, I have an army base right here. I used to go to, and right below Liguria, they show towns that shouldn't be in here, but Portofino and are all here. And this is Sestri Levanti, and right in here is Cinque Terre. Sestri Levanti is a small city, actually. It's very nice. The trains are there. I luckily had my father's friends that lived there, and I could stay with them in an apartment overlooking the beach. A very lovely place to stay. The hotels, the food is excellent. And you can get on the train and go down and get off into the Cinque Terre area. This is two of the five villages. The first one is Monterosso, which is the largest. And you can get off there, visit, maybe have lunch. A nice way to approach the next town, which is Vernazza, which is this one here, is by take a boat, and you can see coming in, like the fishermen did, what these towns look like on the approach. From there, usually that takes up a day. Come back by train to Sestri Levanti. The next day, you head south to the further south city, which is Manarola. No, not Manarola. No, it's Rio Maggiore, is the furthest southern city, and that is the one on your left is Rio Maggiore. It's like a spit of sand here, and it's between two cliffs. It's Rio Maggiore, and then you can, if you like, besides taking the train into Manarola, which is probably the jewel of the five, you can hike in there. You can take the walk, and it's way up here along the cliffs between the villages, and it is straight down, and it now has a fence, so it's helpful. But if you were afraid of heights, it's a couple 150 feet, just like the Amalfi Drive. I forgot to mention the Amalfi Drive today is much safer than it was in the 50s when I was there. The two cars couldn't pass each other, and it was straight down on the side. Today, the Amalfi Drive is maybe a bus you still have to back up to do it, but it's quite much safer than it was before. But this little trail, and people do it, the young people do it all the time, and they hike to there and into Cornelia, which is the smallest, and that's sitting by itself higher between the five villages. But how many have been there? Good. It's really worth the trip. And if you haven't been there, go online and you can pick up all the villages and really have a beautiful view of this place. It's well worth your troubles. Okay, from there we would head north to, where's my pointer? We're going to head north into Portofino, which is in about here. And the town that's above it is, come here, Santa Margherita, and that's a good place to stay if you want to go visit Portofino. It's a lovely town on the water, plenty of gardens and fish, but it's also a lot less expensive than staying in Portofino. Portofino now has become wrong way. There we is. This is the entry into Portofino. Actually, if you're driving in, you come along the whole back of this mountain and in. The first time I went, I think it was in the early 50s, came over a mountain road with a four-wheel drive vehicle to come in, and there was no road that way. The only way in really was by boat. And it has become the place of the rich and famous. And you see some of the smaller yachts here. The bigger ones can only sit about here and take their smaller boats in to arrive. But believe me, some days you're there, it's really packed with yachts. The fishermen still have their own boats, and there's tremendous restaurants, and you can spend a good day in Portofino and have a good lunch, and very enjoyable. The hotels are very expensive. From here, you can go through into Rapallo, into Genoa, on your way north. And then if we're going to go north, we're going to go visit the next area. We're going to visit the Piedmont and into the lake country. Sorry?
She asked which area Frank's grandparents came from.
What's the name?
Potenza.
Oh, Potenza in the south. Right here. I'm going to talk a little about this area if we have time later, but it's a great place to visit down here because there's very few tourists. The people are very friendly. The language becomes a little hazier too. Just like Sicily. Here we're going to go into the Piedmont I just mentioned, okay? And we're going to go into the southeastern part of it here. And right in here is Asti and Alba. Now that's two good towns, but within those towns and that whole area is some of the best wineries in Italy and some of the best wines. Some of the most expensive ones like Barolo and the Barberas, and their white wine that they drink there is Gavi. If you've never drank it, you can find it here. And the Dolcettos. But believe me, the wineries are beautiful in town. Asti is nice because you know of Asti Spumante and the Asti wines. But in the fall, in the Alba, they have the Truffle Festival. And it's a huge, a monstrous tent that would cover probably this whole building, it's divided up in sections. And they raffle off and sell truffles. And all the chefs of Europe come in. I mean, these are thousands and thousands of dollars going out the window. You could probably buy one about this big for $80, you know. You don't know what grade it is, but it's a truffle to bring home and carve up for your dinner. But that's it. And within this also, the wineries are in there, selling wines and tasting, and the chocolates. So you can have a very enjoyable day within this. You pay a fee to come in, and it's very enjoyable. It's worth the trip. From there, you might want to go on to Torino, which is the capital, where my parents came from. And though my grandmother came from Biella, further north, and my grandfather came from a little village north of there, which was a skiing and a summer village called Piveroni. But they really lived in Torino before coming to this country. Torino, most people don't visit. It's actually a very old city with covered sidewalks. The Po River runs through the middle of it. And everybody thinks, well, it's Fiat, so it must be an industrial town. Well, the city was there before Fiat, so all the factories are really on the west and south side of that. I worked for Fiat Magnetti Marelli for many years, reporting their headquarters in Bologna, but we spent a lot of time in that area. I have a cousin still in Torino there. And then the trip north, you can go up to Biella, which is quite farther north. It doesn't even hit on the map here. And it's the silk city. Most of the silk came from and produced in Italy. It's on 2 levels. It's a beautiful city. It rolls down a hill. And then you take the funicular up to the upper city, where, of course, you'll find more of the bigger homes and hotels in that area. And what we're headed for, though, is to Lago Maggiore, this is the first lake, Lago Maggiore, and the Como is there. We'll eventually work our way over here. And so we're headed to Maggiore, and the city is Stresa on the west side is the better one to stay at. It's a lovely city, and then you go to the lake, and we stay at a place right on the lake, a hotel that's just lovely, and you can go walk 100 yards to get on the ferry. There's scheduled boats to go visit the islands, which have the beautiful palaces and villas and gardens. You had to hit about 2 or 3 islands, spend a day doing it. It's very enjoyable. From there, you can go to Como, of course. Now, to go to Como, you can take the southern route, or you take the northern route. And once you get around Maggiore, you're in Switzerland. All right, so you're in Lugano, and then you can go to Bellinzona along the north, and you come back through Locarno, which is a big city, and another big lake at Locarno. And from Locarno, you come straight down into Como. And the bottom end of the lake, you're in Como. What happened to Como? All right. In Lake Como, I don't have all of Como. I stay in Como, which is beautiful town, and the cars go around it, so you're the hotel, the plaza, and everything on the water. And there you get on your boats and ferries and hydrofoils, and you go to the villages that you want to visit. And my favorite one is the one on the left there, which is Bellagio. And Bellagio, and what you don't see there, of course, is it really is a climbing hill. That's where the ferry comes in. You walk a little to the right, and you're walking up all the high streets. And there's something you don't realize there. The lake is like this. Como, the city, is here. This is one arm of the lake. This is another arm of the lake. And Bellagio is right here at this point. And the lake goes on together, going north. And Bellagio sits on this V in the lake. The village, the hotel you're looking at there, and I hope you've all visited, is the Villa d'Este. Now, the Este family is well known throughout Europe, probably the wealthiest family in Italy from many times before, many years, hundreds of years. This was their home, and it's huge, and it's also now a hotel. It has been for many years, and the gardens. Gorgeous place to visit, very expensive, like the San Pietro, but a lovely place to go have a lunch, sit over the gardens, and you'll enjoy it very much so. It's about 4 miles around from Como to this area. Of course, George Clooney, as you know, has the first village on the left of the lake, owns a home right there. You've probably seen pictures of that in the news. And from this, we spent a couple of days, 2 or 3 days there. It's well worthwhile, particularly on the lake and the different villages. From there, you can go to Milan and go home, or you can go to the northeast. And we start with Lake Garda. And this is Sirmione, which is the bottom end of the lake. And it's actually, Sirmione itself is this palace, the castle. It's a castle, a fortress. The water you see in front is part of the moat in front, which goes around to the lake. About 3/4 of the building is on the lake. And this is the moat protected here. And it's a very interesting place. Sorry? It is now, again. The Trieste, let's go back. We can go back a map maybe here. No, I can't. I'll go. Well, I'll point it out when we get there, okay? No, I'm going to have to go back. It's filled it up here. Okay. I got it. I'll do the map. I got to go. That's Sirmione, and this is at the bottom of Lake Garda, and it's just west of Verona. And the area, the lake itself is the largest lake, Garda, and it's a day's trip to go around the lake. At the north end is another city called Riva del Garda, worthwhile, have lunch. But there's a lot of lovely towns all around the lake. Then if you go into Verona, but north of Verona, in that area is also a lake, is good country for wine, particularly in that area. So, The city we go to, of course, next is Verona. And Verona is, of course, northern Italy's loveliest historic cities. The center is set on the Adige River, and it has many Roman and medieval artifacts there. And one of the best and oldest, come on, what's the matter with me? Surviving amphitheater. The amphitheater wouldn't come to me. This is one of the oldest and surviving amphitheaters, and it's still in use. They put on shows there, and they put on athletic events there, and it's still in use. And the Adige River, it's a lovely thing. But with all the history of it and the artifacts, you need 2 or 3 days in this town to find things, and it's very enjoyable there. From here, I better keep going. We're going to run out of time, but it's worth the trip. From there, we go to Vicenza. Vicenza is worth visiting. It's also a city where you can't park. You have to park away from the city and walk in. It's a showcase for architect genius of Andrea Palladio. I think most of you heard of Palladio, and you know the Palladium windows that should be familiar with. This was in the 16th century, and he remodeled most of the buildings here and all the way through the area. It's really a thing to him. And the most famous thing there is the oldest indoor theater, the Teatro Olimpico. And this is really something worth a visit and to see. It is something very special. It's way down about 10 blocks that way. And we went there, and then, of course, I had dropped off my wife and friends closer so they could not have to walk so far, and I went and parked. And I had to come back about 20 minutes on the run to find a car. And, of course, I have a map of Vicenza. It's easy. I know where to meet them back over here. Of course, what's on the maps of these city maps is the one-way streets. So you think you're going to go like this, but you can't get there from here. So I worked my way within a couple of blocks of where I had to be, and there I was facing a good one-way street. And a woman was on the old lady on the street, and I said, "How do I get to this palazzo?" And she looks down the street and she says, "Now, va." Typical, huh? All right. So from Vicenza, we go on to where am I going? I'm going to I lost my Padua. Yeah, sure. And you asked me where Trieste is. Up there, I screwed it up again. Yeah, here we go. You asked me where Trieste is before. You can see it better here. It's where Slovenia, which is old part of Yugoslavia, it's here. This was the battle after the war. Who was going to get Trieste? It became a public city, an open city for many years, and it finally became back to Italy. Oh, I don't know how many, 40, 50 years ago. It's worth a visit. The whole area up here, I'm not going to go there, but the Veneto is a very nice area. And of course, you get up in the northern area here, Trento, and up in the north, you're counting in German. The Austrian influence is still there. The name of the towns and everything, and the directions are in both languages. Let's go on to, I mentioned Padua. Padua is not a great town, but it has 2 things worth seeing. And one is the Cappella De La Slovini, which is it's the Museum of Frescoes. And in order to go there, you have to make a time reservation when you can be there to go through. That many people, and they keep it down to small groups like here. It also has the Basilica de Sant'Antonio. Who else we had? Sant'Antonio in Hackensack, as a matter of fact, one of the churches in Hackensack. And my wife's favorite place there was always to take people to the food market. The food market there is enclosed. It's like a piece of work of art to go see the fruits, the meats, everything. It's just absolutely gorgeous on display. Chocolates, you name it, not just food, but it's a beautiful indoor, they all glass. It really is worth the visit. From there, of course, if you if you've never been to Venice, you're going to go to Venice. My feeling is if you've been there once, it's enough. You spend 2 or 3 days there. And particularly if you go in the summertime, you probably won't want to come back. Today, it's even worse than it was years ago. It's smelly, it's dirty, and because all the students are there. So if you're going to go in this May or October, which is when we usually travel, is May or September, October. The summer is very hot in Italy, though northern Italy, it's not too bad in the mountains and the lakes. From there, though, going south, instead of there, we want to go down to Ravenna. Yeah, now we're going to talk about, yes. Yes. Yes, yes, tiles and mosaics. Mosaic sounds better than tiles. Huh? Yeah, mosaics, and they're in all the churches and the palaces and the homes. It's worth a couple of days really to see it. Yet the town itself was no cars. You can pull up to your hotel and they'll unload you. Then they'll take your car out to some garage somewhere. But you can walk the tiny streets down and enjoy yourself, have a cup of coffee. And that's sort of the end of this northeastern trip. You can wind your way back through Bologna and to Parma. You're going back to Milan or something like that and pick up 3 or 4 new towns on your way. A lot of people like to go down to Rimini, which is an old beach town, very beach town, but a lot of people made it famous. El Duce, that's where he spent a lot of time with that area. And my father's favorite place to visit is what little place is still a country? Huh? You know it. It's on top of a mountaintop. San Marino. San Marino. This is one of the last Duces left. It's the Republic of San Marino. And it's on a mountaintop just west of Rimini. And great to go up and get the views, drive up, buy some stamps, wind your way back down. But you can say you were in another country while you were there. But it's the last remaining non-part of Italy. And it's funny because even Napoleon recognized it for some reason. Maybe it was one of his cousins. I don't know. Okay, like we're running out of time, or how much time do I have? I want to cover a couple. Yeah, I have a couple of towns. I'll try and go through them fast. My other place to visit, and everybody likes to go to Tuscany. Well, I think actually better because of more everybody's there visiting Tuscany. You want to go to Assisi and the Umbrian hill towns. This I think you will not find as many tourists, and I think you'll find it much more varied and older than the hill towns. Assisi, of course, you know, is where St. Francis. Everything there. You can talk. Okay, I better go fast. These are all medieval villages and towns of ancient regions, where charming villages, squares, and Romanesque churches, rolling hills of olive groves, and vineyards define a way of life little changed since the Middle Ages. Assisi is certainly a brick. It's a beautiful place to visit. Skyline, dozens of domos and campaniles. It's the birthplace of St. Francis, founder of the Franciscan order, the largest order in the Catholic Church. The Basilica of St. Francis is there. I get in trouble. Forgot about it. There we are. The hillsides and the Basilica of St. Francis. And it is the artwork by many of the greats is in there, and it's inspired artists throughout the Renaissance. The old town has only 5,000 residents, and it has the steep, narrow lanes and medieval homes in the old town here. And it's really all old town, but it's become more modern as you get away. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just say, we stayed in that long building there that used to be a convent,
Yes.
but now it's what's it called?
Pensione, or is it a pensione? Okay.
It's below the people.
It's takes you a good time to walk through. Yes, beautiful. Okay. Then we talk about the hill towns, and I'll just rush through it. Spello is built during the reign of Augustus Caesar with many churches. That gives you an idea age of these places. Spoleto, gracefully situated on the side of two wooded hills. It's supposedly the loveliest of all the hill towns. That's Spoleto. Gubbio is a city of silence. It's situated between two rugged mountains, and they call it oblivious to the modern era. You're going back many years in this era, and it stays the way it was. Deruta, we mentioned before. This is known for its remarkable ceramics and its workshops. Orvieto is the top of a plateau, great views. It's an Etruscan town. You want to see what the Etruscans look like. It was a papal stronghold during the Renaissance. And Todi is just a smaller place with gardens and a castle, a sleepy medieval hamlet. To give you an idea, but that's why I think this area is worth it more than everybody said has to go to Tuscany. Well, but everybody goes to Tuscany, and over here is a place to go. And if you go online, you can pull up these towns and see a little bit more of them. I'll try and go. One last thing I'd like to mention is the southeast, where nobody goes. Bari is the main town there, and it's a city. Bari is the old town, and about few people, 5,000 live there. In the new town, we had a factory there, so I got to see a little bit of Bari. But to go west and south from there, let me I wanted to put the map on. There's the map we're talking about, this area. Where am I? Come on. I'm upside down. I'm talking about Bari, all right? And this is the area we're talking about. Sorrento is the big naval base. And it's right about here is what we're going to talk about. And Bari, we're going to talk about Alberobello and the region. And it's famous for the trulli. What are the trulli? Yes. The strange conical dwellings. No one knows really where their age or origin. And these are the trulli. They're round, single-story buildings made with uncemented stones. In other words, these are loose stones, usually whitewashed. Their tapered roofs are usually crowned with hieroglyphics, as you see. And they're from the 12th century and up 350 years old, up to 350 years old and back. They're simple to build, but they're only found in this area. And nobody can tell you why or where they come from. There's a lot of stories about why they built them this way. And one of them is, well, the Spanish controlled the area and had a tax guy that came in and measured your building inside, and they could take the stones down and make it look like a smaller building. So when they measured your building, you paid less taxes. This sounds like something that they would do. But there's many other small towns in that area. My brother's traveled there. I've only been to Bari, and he says they're one of the friendliest people there because they don't see many tourists. And he wanted to find this town, the ferry, and he was somewhere else, and he asked him, how do I get there, in Italian. And the guy stopped what he was doing, got in his car, and took him there. He said, well, how are you going to get home? He said, no, I find my way up. I'll get a ride. Or something. That's the kind of people he found in that area, that they were very hospitable to, because they didn't see that many tourists. I think we better stop here, and thank you. Any questions or any points anybody like to bring up on your travels in Italy, a place I missed, like Sicily or Sardinia, Corsica? That's other places to visit, and certainly different. Yeah, not much time to do it, but what I was trying to give you was, there isn't one place called Italy for a long time. Most people forget about the Roman Empire, and they know something about the Renaissance, and they don't know anything about what happened until, even they don't even remember when Italy became a country. Most people have no idea. The idea of travel is see it in small batches, but see a lot of it, of a small area. Yep. Can I hear? Is there a question? Oh, thank you. Grazie, grazie. Yep.
We stayed at a place in Tuscany, but we always went to Torino now in that area, went to the truffle there every year.
Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, enjoyable. Very good. Very enjoyable. Yes. You're all been in Italy. Some comments that you'd like to make? Huh? Thank you.